Okay, good morning everyone. It's 11:05. And Café on women's wellbeing is important for us all, and especially now, I feel, during lockdown. And we are all juggling multiple roles, multiple intersections. We're juggling work, we're juggling home life, and it's in this space at the moment. So my internet is okay. Can people hear me okay? No, okay, right. Let's just hold on a second. I'm just going to check I'm on the right internet connection. Give it a go. Good morning, welcome, Croeso, to our WEN Wales Café on self-care. It's just great to have so many people here to discuss this really important topic. It's incredibly important, our well-being and our self-care, and I feel as that now during lockdown, I feel this is even more. We're working from home, we're caring, we're we're in a different space where we can't get out and do what we normally do. So self-care is so important, and how to avoid burnout. And I'm just really pleased to have four and give their expertise and their tips on what we can do better. To just say, is that okay? Can you think about when? Oh dear, this is terrible. I don't know what to do.
That Catherine's got to. Oh, are you back, Catherine?
I'm back, and I've asked my children to refrain from using the Xbox and everything else online for a minute. Can people hear me okay now? And I'm very quickly now going to move to Ceri Hayes, and I'm going to, because, you know, never mind my introduction and everything else, I think the important thing is we hear from our speakers. So I want to introduce Ceri, who runs her own consultancy, Gender Matters. And we've worked with Ceri before. She's been a great help to WEN in terms of a trustee of WEN in the past, and also working on the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is a UN convention. And she's experienced her own journey of burnout and chronic illness. And she's written a fantastic blog on our website, which you should definitely have a look at. And my first question to Ceri is, can you draw on your personal experiences as an activist and talk about what we can do to look after ourselves as individuals, but also how you think we can create a collective and caring movement?
Oh, diolch yn fawr, Catherine, a bore da pawb. Yeah, it's great to be here with all of you, so thank you. I think the first thing, really, that it's really important that we acknowledge the levels of trauma and emotional suffering and mental health challenges in our society right now, caused by systemic racism, caused by other forms of discrimination, caused by this pandemic, and for a lot of us, let's be honest, caused by the nature of our women's rights work. So I totally agree, Catherine. I think this really, really timely conversation. I think both self-care and collective care are more important than ever right now. So yeah, first thing really I think that we can do as individuals is to acknowledge these feelings of trauma, be kind and gentle with ourselves and each other, and seek professional help if we need it. And there'll be others perhaps in this group better placed than me to recommend exactly where to go for help, but certainly organisations like Mind and Samaritans do fantastic work in that endeavour. I think as feminists, it's really important that we remind ourselves that self-care is not self-indulgence. You know, I think there is a lot of invalidating our own need for self-care as well as that of others. And I think instead it's really helpful to see this, it's really helped me to see this as a radical feminist act. You know, the patriarchy wants us to be the caregivers of the whole world. So actually I see caring for ourselves and each other as part of our struggle. So we can't do our work and we can't live our lives if we are sick. So I think we kind of need to frame this as a political issue and see it in that way first and foremost. I think we need to see it as a process of getting to know our own needs. I think that's really important first and foremost, because if we know what those needs are, then we're better able to meet them. Setting boundaries, I think, is incredibly important. But, you know, the needs of each of us will be different. So for me personally, it's about spending time in nature. It's about digital detox, getting away from the computer as much as I can, when I can. But for other people, that might be taking a nap, that might be meditating, that might be cooking yourself a nice meal, or even just breathing, you know, just taking a really deep breath sometimes and connecting with our bodies, connecting with our feelings, not staying in our heads all the time. So, you know, even just taking a deep breath can be a radical act of self-care, I think. And then collectively, you know, I think it's important that the self-care starts with ourselves, but I think we also need to build both self and collective care into our projects, into our organisations, and into our women's rights movement. So that could, in practical terms, that could mean sharing self-care skills and resources and strategies. That could be integrating time for self-care into our activities. I think it's really important that we reach out to those who are most marginalised and excluded from the self-care discourse. I think there's been a real hijacking of the whole self-care paradigm by the sort of neoliberal capitalist movement, if you like, so that it's become conflated with spa breaks for privileged white women. So we really need to make sure that we're not leaving anybody out of this discourse. And finally, I think it's about asking how we sustain ourselves in organisations where there is discrimination, where, you know, harassment might be rife, very patriarchal organisations. So how can we change these organisations and our movements so that they become more sustainable? So I don't think I have all the answers, but I'm really glad to be initiating this conversation today with everybody. So thanks.
That's fantastic, Ceri. That really resonated with me, and I can see in the chat it resonated with a lot of people. Yeah, self-care isn't about having 500 quid to go on a spa break. Self-care is about taking time out yourself, breathing. When you said that, and I just did a wonderful, really deep, long breath, it was really powerful. So thank you for that. And I think we will explore, as you say, during this conversations, some tips around what organisations can do, and we'll come back to you, Ceri, about how we can build that movement, that kindness, and that way of working that builds in that extra time. So yeah, please do think of your tips and share them with us at the next stage. I'd also like to point out, Ceri's written a really brilliant blog about this on our website. You can see it on our Twitter feed, and you can see it on the blog page of our website, so you can read about what she says in more detail. So I'm going to come to Emily next, and we're really delighted to have Emily Fender, Emily Fender with us today. So she's built a really strong community online and in person, now online, and she runs workshops and retreats promoting female empowerment and support. And she is a mental health nurse, but she's left the NHS, and now she's using her skills as a nurse and as a mental health nurse to really support other people. So welcome, Emily. Great to have you with us from your log cabin.
From my log cabin. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
It sounds idyllic.
Deliver and not under promise now. Yeah, hi, welcome.
I was going to ask you. Oh, sorry, Emily. Great. So I wanted to ask, what inspired you to set up Empower and Girl Boss Club, and why was it needed?
Oh, it was so needed. I didn't realise how needed it was until after I set it up. So yeah, my name's Emily. I'm a registered mental health nurse. As Catherine said, I've left the NHS. So when I first went self-employed, I thought, oh, I don't really have many connections, or my friends don't really get it, because it's a big leap of faith and it's quite, risky. So I put out a Facebook message saying, does anyone want to meet for a coffee and talk about all things sort of self-employed related? And so many people did, they couldn't really afford to take them all for a coffee. So we set up Girl Boss, and it's just gone clean off. It's gone strength to strength, and it's a real testament to how much it was needed, really. A safe space for women to come together without putting a marketing spiel on how well their business is doing, and just be really authentic. We like to sort of give a platform to charities as well. So Alice has joined today. She's from Stop Swansea Takes on Period Poverty. So we think it's really important to share our platform and share our voice with other communities and with other organisations. So that's a bit about Girl Boss. We come together, and then our sort of ethos there is positivity, empowerment and support. And then I racked my brains for months about what I was going to call my new mental health support company. And then it was just right there in Girl Boss values. It's Empower Support. So what we do, we got our CIW, our Care Inspectorate Wales registration this week, which is just a massive achievement for us. We've been working 10 months to get registered and to get accredited with the council. So the main aim of Empower is to take people out of living in hospitals and institutions and back into the community where humans absolutely belong. And I think what we've all learned from lockdown is that no one is missing material things. We are missing human connection and community and that togetherness. So that's all I ever want to do in all my areas, is bring people together like you are here with that collective sense of good and to make them feel like they belong. So we provide nurse-led support in the community, in people's own homes, but we are also really excitingly renovating an 8-bedroom ensuite city centre, like HMO, House of Multiple Occupancy, so that people can leave hospital, come and live with us, whether it's for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, get rehabilitated, upskilled, therapy, and go forth into their new lives and not only survive but thrive in the community. So yeah, I'm just so passionate about bringing people together and giving people a sense of purpose and belonging, and it's key for mental health across the board.
It is, Emily. You're right, and that sounds fantastic. And your enthusiasm and your passion is really shining through. Can you share with us what's been worse in lockdown? How things, what you've noticed on the ground?
Oh yeah. So I said something this morning, and I thought, oh, I need to share this. So I feel that the second wave of the virus is already here, but I feel that it's in regards to mental illness. I just feel everything is so heightened. Everyone's buckets are so full with all these strains and stresses that are going on. You know, we're isolated from our friends and family. Like, Welsh people tend to be quite tactile and cutchy, and like we've got a whole word for it, you know. We're missing that sort of connection. You know, people are really isolated. Mental health services just closed their doors. They just went, we can't put our staff at risk, you know, it's not an essential service, even though it absolutely is. And they just closed, they just shut up shop. And where does that leave all these people who are already on 2.5 year, 3-year waiting lists to get this help? Where does that leave them? Really abandoned. And I think we are going to see a massive influx once lockdown is over. And I think it's going to have such an impact across the board, whether that be missing social interaction in work, dealing with overwhelm and overload and lack of boundaries at home, wearing all these different hats, particularly for women in caregiving roles. Yeah, I think we're going to have more of a health crisis post-COVID in regards to mental health than we've ever seen before, and we have not got the resources, funding or strategy in place for it.
Yeah, exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. I think the fact, yeah, the second wave is the mental health wave, I think. And especially one of the things I was going to say in my introduction, which I didn't get a chance to say because I was sounding like a robot, is about how this week as well, the added upset and anxiety around what happened to George Floyd in America, and how, you know, the racism endemic in our society is another factor to add on top of this. And I think we all need to stand in solidarity with our BAME sisters, our women of colour sisters in America and here, and really support them, and not only support them verbally and by tweeting and so on, but actually by our actions. And that's really important to us all. So thanks, Emily. I now want to introduce Grace Quantock, our third panellist. And Grace is a psychotherapeutic counsellor, and she specialises in working with clients with marginalised identities, life crisis, and complex trauma. And she's a writer, and she's a non-exec director. She's on several boards, and she lives in the South Wales Valleys. So welcome, Grace. It's great to have you here. My question, Grace, for you is, I know you've been working from home for a very long time, personally, and so you've got great insight into self-care tips already around working from home, and so it'd be great to hear your insights into those, please. How can we kind of bring the self-care practice into our routines for working from home?
Thank you, great question. Again, let me know if you can't hear me. I've had pneumonia in the past, and my voice became softer after it, so I'm still kind of adjusting to that, obviously. So yes, as Catherine says, I was housebound for around 6 years. I didn't anticipate being back in so soon, but there we are. And so, you know, in terms of this question, I think the first thing to do is to recognise, you know, just as we've heard from our other speakers, thank you, that's fantastic, that we are working from home and planning self-care within a compromised environment. It's a global pandemic. It's not the holiday we were all hoping for where we finally get to grips with X, Y, or Z. It's not that. And yet, some people are trying to frame it as that. So there can be that pressure that we are doing the pandemic badly. That's not the case. So just briefly kind of starting by unpacking the question about integrating our self-care practices into our routines of working from home. Some of these issues about the integration is about prioritizing. So whose needs are being prioritized? What happened, you know, pre-pandemic? Was it generally that you tended to bend your self-care, your exercise, or your doing things that fuels you around the needs of those you care for? If you're working from home now and living with multiple other people, are those people's needs or work considered more of a priority than your needs and work? So where are you having to fold yourself, particularly around women and femmes often experience themselves having to move their fueling and their lives around the work of men, and that's predicated as more valuable. So actually starting by questioning that, why are we actually having trouble integrating? And then look at what happened pre-pandemic. So when did you practice self-care then? Or was it at the edges? Was it before or after work, or during the lunch hour, or after dropping the kids off? You know, at home we don't have those edges. And, you know, we often hear things like, get up an hour earlier, do it when the children are in bed. These are not things I am saying to you today. I am asking us to question why we are needing to put what keeps us alive and keeps us whole at the edges. And, you know, if to center our needs in our own life, it's going against a huge amount of patterns and social conditioning, particularly if we're women, or if we hold multiple marginalized and oppressed and minoritized identities. You can, you know, if it comes to it, you can find the edges in your current life and commit to examining longer term how you're a part of keeping yourself on the edges. But I wonder if we can figure out, instead of kind of picking up these kind of very commoditized practices, which I want to touch on a little later and some other speakers have touched on, what can we instead look at to figure out what's at risk or what's endangered in our own lives? This is from the work of Dr. Clarissa Pinkola-Estes. What is encroaching on our psychological lives? Where are we under threat? What's under threat? Our sense of our peace, our bodily autonomy, our joy, and how do we defend and preserve it? Now, very practically, one thing that I've worked on and I talk about in my book, which is called Beyond the Boundaries, Finding Freedom and Fulfillment Within Four Walls. It's a guide to living well when you're housebound, which I wrote for people with chronic and serious illness, but actually has been really picked up a lot during the pandemic, interestingly. We talk about working with the accordion practice. So you might have a practice in your day that has movement or nourishment or connection. And then if you have more time, that could expand out. Movement could become an exercise class that you do online, or movement could be a big stretch. You know, nourishment could be, I'm going to take in a book. It could be, I'm going to WhatsApp my best friend. So you have the practice every day, but it can expand or shrink depending on what capacity you have available. And when we're doing these things, instead of kind of saying, right, that's it, I'm going to become one of those people who's going to do the thing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Like, most of us do not have the capacity to do that. And the pandemic means that most people who have practices, as the social and cultural situations are shifting, so we are having to shift our practices. So instead, what can be useful is, say, for a week, for a day, I'm going to experiment with what it is to get these needs met in this way, and let that shift and evolve. You may find that as you do that, you feel more open to doing it, because it doesn't feel like you're locked into trying to meditate every day until you die, as well as putting the washing away, as well as feeding the so-and-so. Like, it can be much more approachable. And just, you know, for some people, just very briefly as I close, for some people, we've heard that self-care is resistance, from the Audre Lorde quote. This is challenging for me because I believe that some people it actually is resistance if you're under attack. I mean, Lorde wrote this as a Black lesbian feminist woman and a breast cancer survivor. This is very different to a privileged white woman saying, I've got my self-care at the £500 spa is resistance. No. What are you actually resisting against? For example, as a disabled woman, I've been told during the pandemic, you know, culturally and socially, that my life wasn't worth saving by ventilation. That's something to resist. To center queer disabled joy within that feels like resistance. And I, you know, I'm still having privilege. So just noticing and checking in with that, and self-care in this way can be being community, being collective, resisting the individualization of this. Looking at my notes, and noticing what works for us and what fuels us at this time, not what it should look like. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Some really great tips there. I can see Emily clapping and lots of smiling faces. In fact, all of our speakers have been speaking. It's been really, really great. Ceri, I want to come back to you and talk about the organisation. I was wanting to ask you around what you think organisations can do and how our vision is a Wales free from gender discrimination, but within that, we want people to have self-care. How can we build a collective kind movement, Ceri? What are your tips for that?
Yeah, I think it starts with leadership really in all our organisations. I think it's about compassionate leadership. You know, we have seen some positive examples of this during the pandemic, I think. You know, notably from people who've talked a lot about Jacinda Ardern, but I think there's been other examples of that. So, you know, showing awareness, showing vulnerability, showing empathy, showing compassion. I think we all need to sort of try and model that. And I think it's really important that the leaders of our organisations are doing that. So basically taking the UK government and doing the exact opposite really of what we've been seeing coming out of there. So I think it starts with leadership, but I think it also needs to translate into our policies and our practice. So as I was saying before, you know, integrating self-care practices into our meetings, integrating it into projects. It doesn't have to have a cost implication. Some of these things, you know, like I say, just doing a collective meditation or breathing properly don't have cost implications, but, you know, it would be good to be able to fund opportunities for people who may not be able to access some of those self-care opportunities. So thinking about that when we're funding our projects, as another example. Thinking about sharing, I think that's something that Emily emphasised a lot about, bringing people together. Facilitating these kind of spaces is so important, and being able to share openly in a safe space our struggles around self-care, and also you know, what works as well is really important. And yeah, I think looking at the cultures within our organisations as well is really vital, and ensuring that those values of compassion and kindness are kind of embodied and translated into the policies and practice is really critical.
Yeah, we revisited WEN Wales' strategy over the past kind of year and a half, and one of our values is kindness, because we felt it was just so important that we treat ourselves kindly, that we're kind to the people we work with, our partners, try and be kind to our staff as well. And yeah, so it's all about reaching out. And I guess what you're saying, Ceri, is showing it's okay to show your vulnerability. Oh, I'm delighted to say that I can see that Zarah, our fourth panelist, has just joined us. Zarah, can you hear me okay? You're just connecting, I can see. Hi Zarah, it's wonderful that you could join us. I'm just going to introduce you, Zarah, and if it's okay, I'm going to come straight to you because I don't want you to miss out on the questions. But first of all, I'm going to introduce you. So Zarah Bashir is a BME mental health youth worker at Diverse Cymru. She's working with young people in schools, primary and secondary schools throughout Wales, and she delivers cultural awareness sessions. But what she also does, and I believe she's just come from a session, she's just run a session literally, she runs My Holistic City, and My Holistic City delivers wellbeing sessions in schools and community centres, and it runs kids yoga classes, and she's really into helping promote a holistic approach. So welcome, Zarah. I'm just going to fill you in a bit on the discussion so you know kind of where we are. People have been talking about the commodification of self-care and how it's almost been made to feel like you have to go out and spend 500 quid on a spa break to be self-caring. And we've talked about how to integrate self-care into our lives. So welcome, Zarah.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And
yes,
I want to...
I've literally just come from my yoga class with a little one, so it's just teaching 2+ to about 8, 9 today. So.
Oh, fantastic. And are you doing that online, Zarah?
Yes, and it's remarkable how adaptable the children are to just getting onto Zoom and just following through, and yeah, it's
Brilliant. So my question for you as a mental health practitioner is really around how you think inequality has impacted young BME women's mental health during this crisis. And I know it's a huge question, especially this week, and we've touched upon the events in America and solidarity over that. So we wondered if you have any strategies that you've got to deal with that mental health crisis that you are seeing and we're all seeing.
I think working with the young people, young women, especially talking to them at the moment, and looking at all the statistics that are being shown online or in the news about like Bangladesh people are twice the risk of death compared to white British people for coronavirus. UK women making up to 55% of UK pregnancy hospitalizations. Chinese, Indian, Pakistani, Caribbean, Black and ethnicity, 10 to 50% higher death rate. All of these are really affecting young women because, I mean, I myself, unfortunately now, it's since lockdown, we've lost 5 members of our family since lockdown began, and 4 male, 1 female, and just the anxiety and the worry and the concern that's just grown through this time for myself as well as the young people that I'm working with. It's just been too much. It's impacted their mental health. It's just I've been talking to them and just trying to get them to learn how to take 3 minutes out at least a day. A lot of the young people I've been talking to, especially again the young females, they're learning how to now juggle either schoolwork or their work or college work with looking after their siblings. So they're taking on 2 different roles as well. Have I frozen? Yeah, so there's just been so much. If it's not the statistics, it's picking up more roles in your family. It's especially again inequality wise with the disadvantaged communities that I work, sharing equipment and then that making an impact on their work. There's so much that I've picked up on and been talking about with young people at the moment.
Thank you, Zarah. Thank you. And we're really sorry to hear about your loss. That is dreadful. And I'm going to come back to I'm going to come back to Emily again. Emily, I'd really like to hear more about what your plans are when people come out of lockdown slowly. How can we make sure that we keep some of, if there are any good practices, someone's put on the chat that, for example, the not commuting has saved them a lot of time every day, and they're feeling really great at the fact that they can work from home and they want to continue to do so. So can you share with us, Emily, ideas around that, what you would want to keep from this time?
Yeah, so I thought a lot about this in the last few weeks, and how I've been quite privileged to stay at home and still be able to set up the business and keep in contact. And I've been following Mother Packer on Instagram and Twitter, and they're looking to sort of enshrine in law that work from home flexible working works, because everyone's doing it, and why can't we continue it afterwards, and across the board really. Yeah, we've saved so much time, but I think the boundaries have got blurred as well a little bit, so it's keeping them boundaries in place again once you go back into work, and setting really firm boundaries and managing our time better. We have absolutely proven across the last 13 weeks that certain office-based jobs, etc., can be done like this. So why shouldn't we keep this up, and work more flexibly and on a sort of outcomes-based outcomes based way, because there's no reason we still need to be punching the clock in a factory setting, 9 to 5, and being sort of overloaded on. We've proven that we're adults and we can still do our job in our own environment and on our own time. But going back to what Ceri says, self-care is more than just the beauty industry and stuff like that. It's self-nourishment, and it's taking their mini sets and time across the day to sort of hit reset. I think every company has got to look to do things differently now. We certainly, our Empower, are offering all flexible contracts, and our management can work from home. Our support workers can't, because they need to be physically present to do their job. But we're looking at giving everyone flexible contracts and matching the service users' needs with the support workers' needs, because we don't want to burn out our entire staff team, because it's such a giving role, and as women we are always giving and giving. So it's about building into our day how to beat the burnout, and I think we've historically worn it as a badge of honour that we're burnt out and we're working so hard, and we're working so much harder than our male counterparts because we've had to prove. But I think it's all time we stand together now and say, actually no, let's have some balance, because I can't pour from an empty cup. I can't give you my best care, my best support, my best anything if I'm not filling up my cup first, if I'm not putting on my oxygen mask first, then my family, then work. And I think we've gone too far the other way, that we need to prove as women we can be not just as good as men in our roles, but better than. So hopefully that's something we learn and take forward, that we can do our roles flexibly and to the same standard. But yeah, if you haven't come across the Flex Appeal movement, they're on Twitter and Instagram as Mother Pucker, and yeah, they're doing amazing work about sort of return to work after maternity and just equal sort of rights across the employment board. So they do amazing work.
Catherine, are you here?
I think we've lost Catherine.
Thank you, everyone. I got kicked out again. Thank you, Emily. I'm back. I'm back now. Sorry. I'm back now. I'm sorry. The internet is a real problem out here in the sticks. Zarah, I wanted to come back to you and ask around any tips you think you have for self-care as a yoga practice. We haven't had.
I've been sending out meditations, and on my Holistic Cities, that's mostly on Instagram, I've been recording. I'll put the information up, videos and stuff, but I've just been showing people how to just take 3 minutes. I mean, 3 minutes isn't that much compared in the grand scheme of things, the whole day, because every time I have people talking to me, it's time, and especially like the speaker just said, we're juggling everything. So it's more concentrating on our breathing and taking our time, and then it's also trying to overcome our barriers at home. So one is time, so we do small amounts of meditation, and 2 is place. You can be anywhere. So the people I work with mostly haven't got the space in the house, so I just recommend just going into the bathroom and locking the door and taking a seat, and we're just concentrating on our breathing, and we do a really quick meditation where we're not using any tools apart from our breath, and you're just taking a deep breath in and out, and the out breath is longer. So I'm going through lots of different techniques with people. I'm also on my Holistic City page, because I work a lot with young people.
That sounds great.
I've got lots of activities, and they're 3 activities for the family, because that's another thing, isn't it? Finance. So every day I put up an activity. So it could be for toddlers, it can be for the adults, it can be both, it can be for young people. So there's an activity every day that I've got up. I'm also in Cardiff hubs and libraries, and I've got up a meditation that I wrote for, that I've just wrote, meditation, I Am a Rainbow meditation. There's a breathing activity, and there's just a quick yoga practice for about 4 minutes for you to do. And it's making a sandwich, but it's, again, just doing a bit of stretches and just getting the benefits.
That's great, Zarah. I'd like to now ask, I'm afraid because I got kicked out of this because of the internet connection, I can't see all the questions in the chat, but if anyone has a question they'd like to put the panellists, please pop it on the chat now. In the meantime, I'd like to ask this question around, if you were First Minister and wave a magic wand, what would be the one thing you would do to change things for the better regarding well-being and self-care? And I'll come to you, Grace, first.
Okay, thank you. So my answer is kind of to question the question, which is kind of my job. So to recognise that, so within women's wellbeing and self-care, recognising that women aren't a monolith and don't necessarily have the same needs among all. And women are many different communities and different peoples, and so there may be dominant voices and people who try to speak for the collective and the whole, but that's just the same as how the society wouldn't expect somebody speaking for all men. So I'd be wanting to go deeper with the women of Wales in different situations and working to co-create solutions with them. Thank you.
Great. So be collaborative. I guess it's back to Ceri's point. Be collaborative. Be collective. Work together and think about how we can do this all together. I'm just seeing if there are any questions on the chat. There's a question here for Zarah, which is from someone saying they're loving that you're encouraging children, Zarah, to know your feelings, know their feelings and their bodily feelings, and how do you feel it helps them with expressing themselves? Zarah, did you see I was asking you a question around children and how expressing and encouraging them to know their feelings, how does it help them with expressing themselves?
Right, so when I'm working with the younger groups, so let's say the primary age, and I'm talking to them about, and I don't say good and bad feelings, we'll go with uncomfortable and comfortable feelings. So when we're talking about uncomfortable feelings, unfortunately, like if we're saying a class of 30, it's usually about 28 to 29 young people will turn around and say, we don't speak about those feelings because I don't want to make other people sad. Now, we all know that if we're not speaking about these feelings, it's just going to impact our mental health, it's going to grow, it's going to make us more, it's going to just heighten those feelings and make us possibly get more anxious, get depressed later on. So how is it helping? It's trying to break those barriers now at an early age, so they're not hitting high school age, going into their exams and not knowing how to express themselves, or any other issues that come when they're older. Does that make sense? And I find it
absolutely. It's about being able to speak.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because the question is, where do they get these ideas that they shouldn't speak if they're feeling low? Is that society? Is it home life? But it's trying to break those ideas, break that, and move on from that. trying to get them to just speak. And it's also learning about our bodies. So when we're feeling a bit anxious, it might not just be here. And this is what I'm always telling them. It can come out in our palms, it can come out in our stomachs, it can come out different ways. So it's learning about our bodies. We can be next to someone and that person might not say anything, but they might make us feel uncomfortable. So again, it's teaching young people from an early age just to listen to what their bodies are telling them. Giving them tools from a very young age. And I know I'm working with 7 in diverse Cymru, but through my holistic city, I've dropped it down to 2, and I'm trying to get my diverse Cymru work to drop it down to basically new parents, because the earlier we start this work, the better.
Thank you, Zarah. I'm not sure how much of a delay there is on Catherine. Are you?
Thank you, Zarah. I posted my question for Ceri in the chat in case she can't hear. I've asked Ceri a question in the chat. I'll turn off my mic and I'll ask my questions in the chat.
All right.
From now on.
So this was the question about the First Minister, yeah? Okay, yeah, I got it. Thank you. For me, I think it would be to have a feminist recovery plan and budget that values everybody in our society and puts well-being and care and good health and an end to discrimination at its centre. So not too ambitious.
Thank you, Ceri. I think the next person to answer that question could be Emily Fender. What would you do if you could have the powers of the First Minister?
Well, I cheated a little bit of my answer. So I asked the lovely Alice that's joined what she would do, because I knew that it would be similar. So I'm sharing on behalf of myself and Alice, who's the social worker who runs Swansea Action Against Period Poverty. So I've been thinking a lot about like flexible working, as I just said, in relation to like mental health and menstrual health, because last week I posted on Instagram that I was interviewing all day across Zoom. I did 20 interviews across 3 days, and I was on my period and I was moody and I was in pain and it was awful. So I think it's about, I would move towards making it flexible and sort of politically acceptable and socially acceptable and not taboo to be able to like phone into work sick with period pains, which is just like so far removed from how we've been taught and conditioned in a male dominated workspace, and about sort of ring fencing funding and making it so aware for GPs to make it part of their talk on every single contact, that they talk about mental health and menstrual health with you know the applicable people, and it's just breaking down that stigma and building companies and our working lives and days and making it acceptable to go like, this is not the week for me to be making decisions, or this is not the day for me to be in charge or in sort of emotive topics, and getting so it society understands our natural ebbs and flows with regards to moods, regards to cycle, and just having more resources available. As part of Empower, we've got an initiative now inspired by the lovely Alice at Stop, that we're going to provide free menstrual products for all our staff and all our service users, and just make it like not taboo and build our culture around that. Like, it is okay to phone in and tell us what you're actually sick with. Like, tell us that you're struggling with your mood, tell us that you've got period pains, that you've got PMS, and make it a really open culture. You know, one of my business partners is my fiance. He's a builder, only ever been exposed to other white working class men on site. And in a meeting the other day, I could have cried with pride. Alice, you love this. He said, I think that in all our bathrooms, in the offices, it should just be free. You shouldn't have to pay for it. And I was just like, proud moment, proud partner moment. And that's how we're making a change, because somebody who a few years ago that thought would never have even entered his head, he's now looking how he, in his place of privilege, can then pass that on to our service users, our staff, and make a difference across the board. So yes, if I was First Minister, what I would do was just phone Alice and see what she wanted to do. That's what I would do, because she's far wiser than me, and that's what we need to do. We need to be, accept and be vulnerable and say, well, I don't know. Let's ask someone who does know, and lead with kindness and compassion, and bring other people and give our platform and our space to people who do know, to people who have got lived experience and education. And there's enough white noise out there at the minute. Let's give our platform to people who do know. So thank you, Alice, for educating me, and then me educating my partner and him passing that on. So that's what I would do.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm just the voice of stepping in for the voice of Catherine. And Zarah, question to you: what would you do if you were First Minister and it could improve the well-being and self-care of women and children in Wales?
Yesterday, I think I would have all GPs have a holistic therapist at every GP, so we can just access things. We could pop in if we needed to find out information about period pains and not reach for our paracetamol. Know where we should be pressing on our hands, so it's around here. If we're feeling uncomfortable during our periods, if we're having headaches, know where to go and press, using what oils we can have, learning breathing techniques. Same with the children as well. You could do stress, so going through a head, back pain, learning techniques like that, learning holistic techniques, and having all surgeries, GPs, having access to a holistic therapist and hubs.
Thank you.
So basically tools for wellbeing.
I think that Catherine's internet has cut out again. Well, that's been absolutely brilliant and really, really helpful and insightful. And we hope that everybody else has got a lot out of that. Please feel free to tweet any thoughts that you might have or actions that you might be taking after the brilliant advice from all our speakers on this cafe. I think I'm going to draw it to a close. Say thank you to Ceri, to Emily, to Grace and to Zarah for joining us, and all the fantastic tips and thoughts that you've shared. It's definitely given me some food for thought. We have recorded this, and we will be sending out links that have been mentioned in the chat alongside a rewatchable link for you to kind of refresh yourself on what we've been speaking about. So yes, thank you very much to everybody who's joined. We hope you got a lot out of it. And look after yourselves, says me. Look after yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.